Welcome to Changing the Game, where bold leaders, rule breakers, and trailblazers drop the playbook and share how they lead, win, and shake things up. Hey there, it's Jordan, your host. If you've been loving the conversations on Changing the Game, I'm excited to introduce something new, the Nobody Cares Club, a show about building the life you actually want without worrying so much about what everyone else thinks. We're talking confidence, wellness, identity, relationships, and the reminder that nobody is thinking about you as much as you think they are. And that's the best news you'll ever hear. So stop waiting, stop overthinking, and get ready to be inspired to go after your dreams. Search Nobody Cares Club wherever you listen, launching summer 2026. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today's guest is Diane Conklin. She is a former University of Missouri softball player and president of a marketing company she built and led for over 30 years. From growing up on a 75-acre farm to helping build women's sports into what they are today, she took the grit, resilience, and problem-solving skills she learned on the field and turned them into a multi-million-dollar business. Now, through her work mentoring entrepreneurs and sharing Diane's dozen, the lessons sport taught her, she continues to help others build lives and careers with intention. Welcome, Diane.
Thank you, Jordan. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the honor. Thank you for asking me. I appreciate it.
I'm so excited to have you, Diane. We had such a fun conversation our first time, so I can't wait to share it with all of our listeners. And I'm excited to actually learn more about Diane's dozen because you are so vocal on LinkedIn about your learnings and sharing your insights with other people. So I want to start with a little bit of your background. You were a part of the first class at Missouri when softball transitioned to NCAA.
Yep. From AIAW to NCAA. Yep. It sure was.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I don't think, sometimes when you're in something, you don't realize how big of a deal it is. And I think that's kind of how that was. It was like, oh, we just did it. And now hearing especially my high school coach and different people talk about that transition and some of the things they liked about it and some of the things that they didn't like about it. It's now I sit back and I think, that really was kind of a big deal to be in that first class that made that transfer. And it, it changed a lot about how we did things, but it also changed a lot about how recruiting was done. And, all of those different things that we call sport today was not sport back then. Or it was, it just looked very different. It really did, I graduated from college in 85. So that was a long time ago. I'm about to have my 45-year high school class reunion this summer.
That's awesome. That's crazy. So awesome.
How'd I get this old?
I feel like it goes by so fast. I mean, I look back at just my playing days were now almost 12 years ago, which is it just goes by so fast.
And the older you get, the faster it goes.
I've heard my mom always says your life's like the end of a toilet paper roll once you get close to the middle.
I love that. I love that. And, I often say life is either too long or too short, depending on how you look at it, for whatever, fill in the blank.
So true. It's like a season. Yeah. It's like you're in a season where it feels like everything takes forever and it lasts a long time. And then all of a sudden you look back and you're like, where did the time go? It's like, it's constantly shifting between the two.
Yeah.
You were in college sports. It's such a monumental time that, it's really hard for people my age to imagine what it was like, especially this new class that now has NIL and social media and all those things. That it's a completely different landscape than it was just 10 years ago. So I really want to get an understanding, what was so different about the time when you played and why was it so monumental to make that NCAA shift?
Well, I think one of the easy things, and I hate to bring it down to this, but part of it was just money, and opportunity. I mean, we didn't play in $9 million facilities or $12 million stadiums. When I was at Mizzou, the softball stadium, which we did have our own, we didn't share with the baseball, but the softball field, it wasn't a stadium, it was a field. And it literally had a set, one of aluminum bleachers. I don't even know if people know what those are anymore, right? One set on the third base side, one set on the first base side. And there were no tickets. You parked in the lot and you came up and watched. And I think probably 95% of the time, the only people in the stands were the women's basketball team, right? And we supported each other like they still do today. But it's interesting. And look, this isn't, I want to make sure everyone understands this isn't like sour grapes. I'm proud of where I came and when I came in, and the fact that I have some, that mattered to where we are today. I want to make that clear. But it's so fun now to watch, these women getting on a plane to go from, Tennessee to Mississippi or from Missouri to Oklahoma. And I'm like, plane? We drove not even a coach. We drove two school vans, two school vans. And so imagine you've got to now stop every time somebody wants to go to the bathroom, or, we did imagine cramming in. You've got, I don't know how many we had on the team, 15 plus managers and coaches and all that. We were all in those two vans. So you were packed in there doing homework and trying to get studies done, or to sleep, because there were times when we were in those vans overnight and someone was driving, kind of thing. So it's just very different. And, like I said, I look now with a lot of pride on where sports, especially women's sports, has gone. And to know that you were some part of, of that, but it was very different. I mean, even little things like I was in the Atlanta airport a few years ago when I didn't live here, and I saw the luggage coming out that had a University of Missouri patch on it and names and numbers, and I'm looking at this going, "Oh my gosh, what is this?" Right? Well, it was their luggage that was customized for them. We literally had one bag that was about 12 inches wide by about 12 inches tall and probably 8 inches that fit our glove and our cleats.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there was nothing else. And so in your own luggage, your own bag kind of thing. But, it really came down to a lot of it was money, a lot of it was opportunity. There was no pro league for us. There was no going on and playing somewhere else. And so you had to get your studies and you had to get your degree and all of that. And, I think I think just the love of the game, that pure in your soul, like just love it kind of thing. I mean, that's why we played, and we didn't have to worry. Look, the other difference is there's a lot more pressure now with
Yeah.
social media, with NIL, and hey, you're making money. Because let's face it, some sports, they're really semi-pro athletes. They're really pro athletes, right? It's a business. And so I don't know that the NIL and that the social media and all of those pressures have necessarily helped or hurt. It's just different. Um, but I think acknowledging that those differences are there and the differences that it has made. And I think for the younger athletes, understanding like where that history is. And look, there were women who came before me, in college sports that had, I mean, I think about Pat Summitt's stories about her going out as the coach and doing the laundry at night, and washing uniforms. It's very, very different. But I think understanding that history and where things came from today is probably even more important, because it has moved so far, on the other side of that.
I totally agree, Diane. I think understanding the women that came before you and what they had to do to get the sport to where it is now is so important. And
Yeah.
I actually wrote down love of your sport while you were talking, and then you brought it up there at the end. I think like you
Yeah.
really lived in a space where it was about the sport. Like you could enjoy your time on the field and know that it's truly just about the
Yeah.
game and your teammates.
Yeah. Because there wasn't anything else. It was that, and for lack of better word, it was that feeling in your soul, that joy, that pure joy of loving that thing in your heart and your soul, and looking forward to every piece of practice, games, travel, all of it, because you knew it was an opportunity that you were being afforded that not everyone got.
Yep.
And we appreciated that, the one hat that you got and the two uniforms that we had, right? We had a yellow and a black, one pair of cleats, kind of thing. And so I think, having the appreciation for it, there's just joy in that. And there still is, I still feel that same, euphoria when I watch, whether it's basketball or softball or any of the other sports. I still, and I think that's probably why I still watch the way I do, right? Is in some ways you relive that every time. I don't know, the competition is different now, it's on a different level. I would hope, 30 plus years later. But you sort of get that, that nostalgic, oh my gosh, it makes me miss it. But I'm good with them taking the field right now.
Yeah, I mean, that feeling in your soul is so important. I mean, I think with all the distractions that these younger generations of athletes have between, the money and the status, it can be like you said, a lot more pressure, but it really does come down to like loving the game, feeling that in your soul. Otherwise, it's like, what do you have left at the end of the day?
Yeah,
Like, you need that love, or it's
yeah,
just feel like I'm like it's just incredibly transactional, or like you're burning out. Like when it becomes truly just a job,
yeah.
it's like I don't know.
Well, and just the social media aspect of it. I mean, sometimes it makes me mad. The comments that people make and the just the nastiness. You lose a game and it's fire the coach. I'm like, whoa, hold up. It's crazy, and we didn't have that. Like I said, there was none of that, and I just hope that young women, especially today, are smart enough to utilize social media for what it is, or to stay off of it until they get out of school. And I get it. If you got the big NIL money, sometimes you can't do that. But it's just somebody else's opinion, and their opinion doesn't matter because they don't get to determine whether you can do something or not. And I think that's, if there's one message that I would like for young athletes to hear, it's that.
Yeah, I love that, Diane. That's a mic drop moment because it's just the trolls online can be so like it's just another layer of pressure that these young athletes don't need. And it's like they're tweeting at you or commenting at you from their couch. Like you
Yeah.
are the one that's doing the work.
Oh, don't get me started. Yeah, the couch potato, the Sunday quarter, the couch potato quarterback who's never had a successful thing happen in their life, who's never been an athlete at that level.
Yep. Yep.
It's we're in the middle of the Olympics, of course, right now as we're talking, and look at what's happening with Lindsey Vaughn.
I was gonna bring this up because I was debating if I should bring this up because it drives me insane.
Yeah, but here's the thing, especially for women, and I don't mean to harp on the women thing, but that's what we're talking about, right? You look at Simone Biles, who took some time off for mental health reasons, and people, you should compete, blah blah blah, whatever it was, right? And now here's Lindsey Vaughn, who works through all of these injuries and all of these things, and 9 days before the Olympic tears an ACL, and now she's wrong for competing. And so, to some degree, you can't. That's the reason that I said you can't do things for other people. You have to do it for yourself, for your reasons, for those things that become internal. Because, and I think that's the biggest lesson I've learned from Lindsey Vaughn, is she didn't do it for any reason other than she wanted to get up there on that mountain and compete at 41 years old. And, if you know anything about anatomy or the knee or sports, the ACL has very little to do with skiing. She didn't need it. But people are so quick to judge. Why? Because it's easy. It's easier than them going out and doing something. And so don't let those naysayers and those people have that negative effect on anything that you're doing in school, in sports, in businesses that you're trying to start, and anything that you're doing. You have to forge your own path.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's so easy for people when they're in that position to try to drag high achievers down
Yeah.
instead of lifting. Like it's such an interesting dynamic. I think our society kind of represents at times, like when you're at your lowest, when you're not disciplined, when you're doing things that the crowd's comfortable with, it's like, we love you, you're great. And then when you do something that makes them uncomfortable, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
If you understand the reason behind it, though, that's the key. Because see, when you're doing things like them, you're like them. You're in the group, right? We're all in this group together. But when you do something amazing, when you do something outstanding, now you set yourself apart because you moved over here from this group. And people want people to be like them. That's why you pulled the frog back down into the boiling water, right? It's that piece. And when you understand that, then you get to make the decision on your own do I want to be like the group, or do I want to achieve this thing? And the more time you spend over here, the more these people go away, the more of those people that you don't hang out with. But the good news is you get people over here who are like you. And that's who you want to be around anyway, the successful, the thriving, the people who are moving forward to something. Those are the people you want to hang out with.
That's so true. I've actually noticed that in my own life when I'm doing something that is maybe trying to up level myself or separate myself from just I want to achieve more. I found out actually who my real friends are in that, because the ones that continue to cheer for you and support you are the ones
Yeah.
that are going to, like, they genuinely want you to succeed.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of look and see, oh, who maybe thinks what I'm doing is a bit weird, or like maybe they're just acting a bit different towards me because of this. It's kind of like, well, maybe I can lift them with me, and if they decide, if they choose not to, then that's on them.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
have my people that
Yeah.
are supporting me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's it's, I can't tell you how many times I say to people, if you can't just be happy for me, then either don't say anything or go away. Now, it takes a while to get there. Let me just be clear. You're probably not going to feel comfortable doing that in your 20s. You're probably not. But at this point in my life, I'm like, no matter what it is, business, personal, and, it's hard to make people understand that. But you can either be happy for me, or either don't say anything about it, or you have to go away, because I can't have that in my life. I can't have that. You're not pulling this frog back into the boiling water.
How long did it take you to get there? Like, what were some things where you were like, you had to go through in order to say, finally have the confidence to be like, you know what? If you're not for me, then that's fine, but I don't need you.
I think for me, it probably started at a younger age, because growing up on that farm, like, not many people did that, even around where I lived, right? And so it's funny going back to reunions now. People are like, "Do you remember we went to this place and did this?" I'm like, "No," because I didn't do that stuff, right? Because one, I lived farther away. My birthday was late, so I didn't start driving legally on the road in a car, right? I was driving tractors when I was old enough before I could reach the pedals. But, and so there's this piece of that feeling of being different, that feeling of you don't always fit in. And so I think it probably happened for me earlier. And I was somebody who I went 8 hours away from home to college. Missouri was 8 hours away from where I lived, because I wanted that experience. I wanted that to feel that independence. I wanted that to know I could make it on my own. And so to some degree, I think probably in my 20s, because of all of those things, there wasn't a big group of friends for me in high school. I was the study bug and the athlete. That's what I concentrated on. And I had my stuff I had to do on the farm. That was really all you had time for, kind of thing. So, but I think for everybody, the journey is different, and just be patient with it. It's okay. Your journey is your own. Now that doesn't mean be lazy and don't try to grow and don't try to, move things along. You're constantly growing. If you're not getting 1% better every day, you're moving in the wrong direction. I said 1%, not 100, not 10, just one little bit better every day.
I totally agree with that. Yeah. And sometimes it's hard, I feel like, as a former athlete, at least from my own experience, to understand that 1% better, like, you actually have to pay attention to those wins, because as athletes, we're so used to the big wins.
Oh, yeah.
That's what you want to celebrate. But it's truly just about that 1% better every day. And sometimes it's not really that visible.
Yeah. And, I think that's the thing. We have a tendency, because we're always chasing what I call the dangling carrot, right? It's always just out of our reach. And we continue chasing that. But what we forget to do is we forget to turn around and celebrate the victory. Mm-hmm. We don't do enough of that, right? And, I had my high school softball coach asked me what kind of athlete I thought I was. And I said, I'm just an average athlete that worked harder than most everybody else. And she slammed her hand on the table. She said, Diane, average athletes don't play Division I college softball. And she said, asked me the same thing about my business. And I gave her the same response. And she's like, average business owners don't make 6 and 7 figures and beyond a year, right? And so having some, and then she said, the thing that really got me was, this is a woman who coached for 30 years. She said, Diane, you were one of the top 10 players of all time. She's in the Ohio Hall of Fame, coaches, blah, blah, blah. And she said, and if I thought about it, probably the top five. And when she said those words to me, I finally internalized it, right? Because nobody outside of you motivates you. You either motivate yourself or you don't, right? But the inspiration I got from that was finally realizing that all of this negative self-talk and all this doubt that I thought was somehow, this crown that I wore, because after all, Diane's not going to brag. It's not my thing. It's just not who I am. But there was a sense of pride that I could have without being conceited, without being prideful, without people going, gosh, you think you're all that, and really acknowledging the accomplishments that I had made.
Yeah. I just actually spoke to two athletes this morning before our call, and they have the same issues now that, I think as athletes, we wear that humility as a badge of honor. Like, it's about the team. It's not about me. And it really is such a fine line to like where you're being self-deprecating almost, like where you're not acknowledging your true accomplishments and your worth. And so I kind of want to know, like, if you were talking to those two athletes that I spoke with this morning, how would you tactically tell them to speak about themselves in a way that shows their true worth, especially like when they're going into the real world of interview processes and trying to get a job beyond the uniform? Like, what advice would you give them?
You know what? I would say, do you know the feeling that you get when you're on the field, the diamond, the whatever, the court, whatever it is, right? Do you know that feeling that when you hit the shot or you make that clutch hit, can you feel that? Every athlete's going to say, oh yeah, right? I know what that feels like. That's what you need to take into this interview process. That kind of pride, that kind of confidence in what you're doing. Because here's the other thing, somebody in baseball or softball who bats 300 is a good hitter, which means if you look at it the other way, you failed 70% of the time. What's a good shooter in basketball? 40, 50%? That's great, right? So life is the same way. And just because here's the advice I gave one of my business clients that I think applies here, that he always brings back up. If somebody tells you no, they're not saying no to you. It's not personal. They're saying no, it's not the right time. They're saying no to the opportunity, right? And so we take these things, oh, I failed. No, you didn't. You just weren't the right person, or it wasn't the right time for them to hire you, or you were overqualified, whatever it was. But when you can get to the point where you don't take that personally, and when you walk into a place knowing with that athletic piece of you, right? And notice even my posture changes when I say it, right? Like I sit up straighter. I have this strength about me. Every athlete knows what that feels like. And just because someone's older than you or someone has more time in grade or in the job doesn't mean they are smarter, they know more, or that they're better than you. It just means they've had a different experience. And different is just that. It's just different.
That's amazing advice, Diane. I love it. You have so much wisdom, and I do want to know, I'm so curious, and I want you to walk our listeners through this, how you got to this point where you are running a multi-million-dollar marketing company, you are coaching business clients, when you got a master's degree in exercise science. How did that happen?
Well, so it's an interesting story, and a long one that I'll make a lot shorter. But, as an athlete and as somebody who grew up on a farm, I always had this feeling that there was more for me. There was something out there that I wanted to do that was more. And part of it, I'm just going to be 100% honest with you. Part of it was monetary. Yeah. Part of it was I wanted to make more money. But part of it was this yearning to make a real difference. And my definition of real was probably different than everyone else's because I had made huge differences in the fitness industry, because I was in that industry even after I got my master's degree for about 15 years. But there was just this thing in me that said, there's something else, there's something else, there's something else. And so I was introduced to a guy a lot, actually. I was taking courses and reading and getting into programs. And I spent more money the first year in my business on education than I made. Not necessarily what you want to do, but it turned out okay for me. That's not my recommendation for those of you who are listening. But because I'm a student and I'm a learner, I'm constantly looking at what's next and what's the next thing. And so through that process, I met a man by the name of Ted Thomas who lives in Florida. And he looked at me at one of these events and he said, Diane, what are you going to do when you grow up? I thought was grown up. I was in my 20s, late 20s, early 30s. And the long story short is that he gave me an opportunity to come work for him for a year for no pay. Yes, I said no pay. But he was going to teach me everything he knew. And I knew something in me said, that's the way, that's my foot in the door in this business. That's the way I'm going to understand this. And it turned out there was a lot of what I call direct response marketing. And what I found was I fell in love with marketing just like I had fallen in love with health and fitness. I still to this day, when I go to the gym, it's hard for me to watch people do things in incorrect form. Okay, let me not say wrong, but the incorrect form, and not run over and say, "Can I help you with this?" Right? It's hard. It's easier now than it used to be. But I have that same kind of love, that same kind of feeling inside of me with the marketing stuff. And it's just because it's the same result, because I get to make an impact on people's lives that creates what I call the ripple effect. And that's an acronym. Repetition in place produces little effects somewhere. Repetition in place produces little effects somewhere. So the repetitions that I get to make on a business owner's life, on an athlete's life, in this interview, right? So I'm touching you. Let's just use this, right? Yeah. You're the person I'm talking to directly, but every single person that hears this, I have an effect on their lives, but it's bigger than that. The ripple effect is that every person they talk to or they come in contact with, indirectly, I have an effect on.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's this constant ripple effect. And I think about, one particular client who I helped literally go from, in his words, broke as a joke, driving around in his pickup truck, to 6 figures in 90 days, 7 figures in 12 months, and on to multiple 7 figures. I think about, his name is Casey, and he's married and has 2 kids. And I think all of the people that those kids, he was in a small church organization that's who his clients were. Every church, every pastor, every one of his kids, every sports team, every doctor, every person who built his new home and dug that lake, all of those people are a ripple effect from me.
Yeah.
And so that's the piece for me that excites me. And the marketing thing just sort of became a thing of its own. And I found out that I enjoyed speaking and I enjoyed teaching and I enjoyed coaching. Imagine that, right? Yeah. All the things that I love doing that I got away from after I got my degree. So I had not a great experience student teaching in my undergrad. And so that's really why I went and got my master's degree. Was I was like, I can't do that. Now what am I going to do? Right? And I thought about physical therapy, but those programs were so hard to get into that's why I ended up with exercise science. But that's always been my kind of thing, is how do I make that difference? And I don't know of any other way, better way. There are other ways, but for me, than affecting somebody's business, which affects their profit, which affects the lives of their staff and employees, yeah, and the money they make and every aspect then of their life. Not that money's everything, but I wouldn't turn it down if you wanted to give me some.
Yeah, of course not. No, but Diane, I absolutely love that. I think impact it's so powerful. Like, you were able to find a way to impact or make impact your through line, and no matter what you did. And I think sometimes when you look at a career journey on paper, you could be like, well, how did this happen? Like, how did you go from training and exercise science to now being a business coach and running a big business? But it really is, when you break it down to that, it's like, well, I enjoy making impact, and I found a way where I could do that in any arena.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, go on.
No, it just so happened that that's how it how it came along and how it happened for me. And so, but again, I enjoy it. I love it. I told somebody, earlier today, when it stops being fun, I'll stop doing it.
Yeah. I mean, that is actually a really powerful compass because it's like when you can no longer wake up and say this is fun or I feel really connected to my purpose
Yeah.
here, then it's kind of like, well,
Yeah.
should I focus somewhere else where I
Yep.
can really use that passion?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, super powerful. And I just the last thing I wanted to comment on or just reiterate what you said when your mentor said, "What are you going to do when you grow up?" And you said you were in your late 20s already. And you're like, "I thought I was grown up." I just think that I just wanted to reiterate on that because I think a lot of people and people I talk to in my job at Shift Group, they think, well, I've done this one thing for so long. And I can speak from my own experience. Like, I went to law school. I never took the bar. I never practiced law. And a lot of people are just kind of have a little fear to make
Yeah.
a change because they're like, well, I put in all this work and all this time. So I
Yep.
can't abandon ship now. But
Right.
you
So instead, do something you hate for 40 years
yeah,
and be
yeah.
miserable. Is that the alternative? Right. I mean, not, and I didn't hate what I was doing. It just was kind of like this natural progression. But, and then you get the flip side. I have a friend who loves music, but he can't make enough money to support him, his wife, and his two boys making music. So he has a marketing company and he gigs on the side. Right. So
Right.
when you, it's kind of like the Cheshire Cat, right? In Wizard of Oz. When you get to the fork in the road, you don't have two choices, you have three. You can go to the left, you can go to the right, or you can stay on the same path you're on. See, people think, oh, I only have two choices, right? Stop or go. No, you can keep going the way you're going, but you've got to be able to look at what does that mean? Am I happy? Do I want something different? Do I want to make more money? Do I want to take more time off? What do you want? And that's the thing. That's the question. What do you want? Nobody thinks about that. Oh, I'm
No.
stuck in this job because I have what? I've got a house or I've got a car payment or I have a whatever. When you turn your back on that thing that is it for me, it's my gut, right? Maybe for you, it's your heart. Maybe it's your throat, whatever it is, where it is for you. Maybe it's between your shoulder blades. But when I go against the thing that's in my gut, it always bites me in the
Mhm.
what, right? On the backside, always. Because it's telling it, call it what you want, call it intuition, call it God, call it spirit, call it I don't care what you call it, but there's a reason. A former coach of mine used to say to me, if you hear something 3 times, you should stop and listen. And then she would look at me and say, Diane, I know for you, sometimes you have to hear things 33 times before, right? She was kidding kind of, but it's that piece of, when you hear it, when you see it, when you feel it over and over and over again, somebody's trying to tell you something. You should stop and pay attention. Then you get to choose. But most of the time when you follow your gut, God, the intuition, again, whatever you call it, you're going to find out that there's a reason, there's something there. And when I branched out on my own and stopped working for the guy who I actually did work for a year for free. He did pay me a little bit, and he gave me an opportunity to make some commissions, and I could tell you a whole story about how I got money to live on, but that's for another time because it'll take too long. But when I left there, I started a coaching division of his company, and then a few months later, he called and asked me to come run his company, which I did for 8 years and took him from literally a converted laundry room with 1.5 employees to 2 offices, 3 companies, and $7 million. A year after I left, he was back into a very small one-person run office. But when I did that, I stayed way too long. I should have left long before I did. And when I did leave, I had no net. Again, I'm not recommending this, but everything in me said it's time, it's past time. And everybody around me that I respected was saying it's time. And so when I made that leap, I had no net. And so I did things that I didn't think I wanted to. I didn't have any clients. I didn't have a list. I didn't have a product. I didn't have anything. But I had contacts and I had the skills that I had developed and a reputation in the industry that that people knew they could trust me. And so I started to get phone calls from people. Hey, will you run my sales table? Hey, will you run my event? Hey, will you train my people? And although it wasn't necessarily where I wanted to be in that moment, I did it to lead me to where I want to be. And now I do, very rarely do I do event planning or event marketing or any, I still speak, but I don't want to run the event. It's tiring. It's exhausting,
Yeah.
right? And so sometimes you do things that are aligned in the steps, but aren't the thing that is ultimately what you want to do to get where you want to be. And some people are lucky enough to have that direct route, and good for them. Good for them. But there's nothing wrong with not working in your degree field for the next 50 years. People did that when our grandparents were alive. You know, they got a gold watch and went off along their merry way. That doesn't happen anymore. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
Partially because technology, and partially because, so many things are changing, AI and all that. But think about this, right? It's a cell phone. And yes, just so you know, I also have one of these that has a
Yes.
thing on it, right? But this is a computer. Who thought when I was a little girl that, first of all, there weren't computers when I was in college was the size of a room, right?
Crazy.
Now
Yeah.
you carry one in your pocket or your purse. That's happened in 40 years, less than that. It's
Yeah.
crazy. So things change. So some of the things that people are getting degrees in today won't even exist 30 years from now.
So true. It's so true. And that's where this is why I love talking to entrepreneurs also, is because just the radical self belief is like so admirable. Like you said, I didn't have a safety net, but I did it anyway. And you know what? Like in 30 years, maybe your degree won't exist. But if you have that radical self belief and know that you can go out and make something work, or if you have that through line of impact and just, what the mark you want to leave on the world, it's not going to matter so much because
And
you're
you
going to
know
figure
what? Every athlete at the college level has that somewhere in them. That belief that they can do it. Otherwise, they would have never ended up a D1 or D2 or D3 or elemental P, whatever, right? A college athlete. They wouldn't. You just have to tap into that. And here's the piece. If you're listening to this and you've ever been an athlete or you've ever owned a business, here's the piece. You're going to make it. Nobody ever worries about Diane, because if I had to go be a greeter at Walmart, I would go be a greeter at Walmart temporarily. You know, you just do whatever it takes until you get to the point where you don't have to do those things anymore. It's just part of life. It's just, and I think, part of that's probably lessons I learned in sports. Some of it's probably lessons I learned on the farm, but you have to plant the seed and water it and do all of those things before you're going to get a plant. And unfortunately, today we want the plant before we even went to the store and bought the seed. That instant gratification. It's not how it works. And I don't care how much technology we have, that part is never going to change.
so true. It's so true. Diane, I love it. I know we're coming up on some time here, so there's a couple more questions that I do want to ask you. I want to hear about Diane's dozen because we talked about it at the beginning. So how did you come up with that? And tell our listeners a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I talk about a lot of things in my business and in my life. Discipline, being organized, planning, plant the seed before it's fertilized, being a great communicator, taking responsibility, all these different things, integrity, continuing to learn. And people would say to me, Dan, where did you learn these lessons? Well, I got most of them from sports because I've been doing that for a long time. And people would say to me, Diane, you need to talk about this. Like, you need to share this thing. And so finally, I had a coach that really encouraged me. And I was like, okay. And I had, interestingly enough, I'm a big Pat Summit fan because that's where I got my master's at Tennessee. And so I have her definite dozen on the hutch right over there. You can't see it, but of my desk. And then Dawn Staley came out with her book last summer, and she had 13 things in it. And I was like, you know what? It's just time. And so I literally just sat down, and they just spewed out of me. So I did one for sports, I did one for the farm, and I did one about the lessons I learned being an aunt. But that's where it came from. And I just shot videos, and I just sat down at the thing, and I didn't preempt anything or whatever. I just started talking. and it just comes out. But I think it did that because it's how I live my life. It's who I am. It's not some fake thing. It's not something I made up. It wasn't something that I had to think about. It's who I am. I'm disciplined. I'm organized. I do things with intention. I'm constantly learning. I'm a problem solver. All of the things that are in there are me. And so when you live what when you walk your talk, right? When you walk the same thing that you talk, when you live that piece of who you are with what I call with integrity, the rest falls into place. See, I don't have to worry about what I say to you because it's true. I don't have to worry about, oh gosh, what lie did I tell Jordan that I didn't tell Matt, that I didn't tell Bob, right? It's complicated that way. This way I'm free to, you may not like me, but I'm going to tell you what you want to hear and I'm going to be straight with you. Those are the two things you can guarantee on.
I love that, Diane. That reminds me of, some listeners probably won't even know who Judge Judy is, but she always says, if you're going to be a liar, you better have a good memory.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And I don't. So I might as well just tell the darn truth.
Yes, exactly. I absolutely love that. It's so authentic to you, all those lessons. And which one's your favorite? If you could give one out.
It would have to, discipline and hard work kind of go hand in hand, but the one for me is being a problem solver. Because it's everywhere. And if you can be a problem solver, there's nothing you can't do in life. And you learn it from sports. I'm just going to use softball, but basketball, tennis, whatever position I'm playing, I have to know how many outs there are, what the run situation is, what the back count is, what pitcher is pitching, what pitch they're pitching, where my position needs to be. And then what do I do if the ball is hit on the ground? What do I do if it's hit in the air? What if it's a fly ball? What if it's a ground? What if it's a pop up? All of these things I have to know. And I have to do that in 5 or 10 seconds between the time the catcher catches the ball, throws it back to the pitcher, and she winds up, right? Basketball's the same way. If I'm dribbling up, where are the defenders? What defense are they in? What offense are we? It's the same. You're constantly problem solving. And when you can solve a problem in life, when you can be a problem solver in business, you can get a job anywhere, doing anything. And I think I shared with you when we talked before, the guy that I worked with for free for a year said to me at one point, you think you're here because you can sell, and I can, but you're really here because you can solve a problem. You're a problem solver. And I use it every day of my life. There's always a problem to be solved. And when you go into things with that mentality, you never have to freak out because you can always respond instead of reacting when you're a problem solver.
I absolutely love the analogy that you made with sports. Like, I honestly never really considered that. Like, I'm solving a problem on the court. How do I stop the other side?
Yeah. How do I stop them and how do I score?
Yeah, exactly. And so being able to apply that to business, or at least relate in an interview process on why that makes you a great problem solver. Like, you already have those skills. Yeah. Something I've never considered. I think that's great advice.
And think about driving a car. You're problem solving. You better be problem solving every second while you're behind the wheel of that, however much a car weighs, right? The wheel. When do I turn? When do I not turn? When do I hit the brake? When do I slow down? When do I speed up? Your life is about problem solving, but so many people don't have that problem solving common sense gene anymore.
Yeah. I agree with that a little bit. And we could probably go on and on about that. But you mentioned that Aunt Diane is your favorite role. So I just want to know why does being Aunt Diane matter to you so much?
It's the same reason that you talked about. It's that impact word, right? But there's no greater time in a person's life that you can impact them and make a difference than when they're little. And kids are just happiness and joy, and they spread that everywhere they go. There's no time when I'm more present than I am when I'm with a kid. And Aunt Di is special for two reasons, because there's two ways I get to be an aunt. One is by blood. That's the one most of you think about. But the one that's almost more special than that is the one by love. Yeah. So I get to be an aunt by blood and by love. And when you get both, it's an amazing combination. But to know that, to watch them from when they're little to when they grow and how they advance and how excited they are when they learn something and they want to share that with you and all of that, right? It's this piece of, it's just that joy and happiness. It's the hugs and kisses. It's all those lessons about, the things they do without a filter, without that, they just reckless abandon. They'll ask for help. They'll fall asleep in the weirdest position. It's like, how did you fall asleep there? They ask questions. They don't want to know about being patient. They want to be persistent. They're going to find a way to get what they want if they have to ask 12 different ways around the corner and through and upside down because they want you to say yes. Right? So and so it's just the purity of a child saying, "Hi, Aunt Di. Bye, Aunt Di. I love you." Right? It's like, it melts my heart. And so there's a side of me that not everybody gets to see. And they're so spontaneous. And I think we lose that, right, when we get to be adults. But it's that piece of having, no matter what else is going on, you could have the worst day. And when that little says hello or asks you a question, for me, my heart smiles. And it happens every time. And so, and it's all kids, but obviously the nieces and nephews have a more special place because they're mine. Again, whether it's by blood or by love.
Yeah.
And so there's so many things. If you just step back and look, just step back and watch them for a minute. I don't know how you cannot smile. Go sit on the bench on a playground.
Yeah.
And see what happens. It's pure. Everything they do is pure until they learn to lie. And then it's a whole different story. But...
Let me switch up on you a little bit. But man, until then, kids really are the best example of how society should operate. And like what we've lost as adults. Like they are such a great example of how we can be better people.
Yep. They really are.
Diane, I've absolutely loved chatting with you today. I always ask the same question for every guest at the end of the show because the namesake of the show is changing the game. So I just want to know, what does changing the game mean to you personally?
It's everything. It's constant. The only thing in life that is constant is change. And so you have to go into everything thinking about that. And, let's go back to what we started talking about early when we first started this conversation, is think about how much pick whatever your sport is, how much it's changed in your lifetime. Right. And then go, my challenge would be go do some research and find out what it was like, know the history of what it is that you're doing, whether it's sport or your business or your career or whatever. But the thing about change is that it is constant and it's going to happen, and you can resist it all you want, it's still going to happen. And so again, if you go into it with that attitude of, look, this is going to change. I might know what I'm doing today, but tomorrow might be different. We live in a different world now. And so for me, changing the game is everything. It's like, if you had 3 words to describe what's happening in the world, it's changing the game. And whether that's sports or business or personal life or whatever, right? Even in your relationships, you got to constantly be changing the game, because when things stay the same, they get stagnant. And so I would say, if you had 3 words to live your life by, make them those. How do I change the game? How do I get better every day? And if you get better every day, you're going to change the game. Because here's the thing, it's all a game anyway.
Yeah.
Remember that. I have a softball sitting on my desk. You can't see it. And it's sitting there because I want I need to sometimes have more fun. But it's a reminder to me that business is a game too. It's all a game. It's all a game. And ain't none of us getting out of it alive.
Yeah. Ain't that true? Diane, thank you so much for your time. Amazing wisdom. I'm so grateful that I've been able to learn with you for another almost 50 minutes here. Can our listeners connect with you on LinkedIn? Where should they find you?
Yeah, anywhere you want, any of the socials, whatever. I'm Diane Conklin. I'm pretty easy to find, just my name. The website is old, but it's a Complete Marketing Systems. I keep things pretty simple, but yeah, LinkedIn is Diane Conklin. Anywhere else is Diane Conklin. I'm easy to find. Happy to answer questions. Happy to connect with any of your listeners. And again, thank you for having me and for the honor and privilege of being able to share for a little bit with your people.
Thank you so much, Diane. It means so much to me. I'm so happy to share your story, and thank you to the listeners who are here as well. We'll be back with another episode. Again, thanks all.